The Black Death, a disastrous disease believed to have begun in China in 1334 and spreading across the trade routes and reaching Europe. It is believed that the bubonic plague killed an estimated 25 million people and lingered on for centuries. Hey there everyone, today I shall be reviewing A Plague Tale: Innocence. This game was released in May 2019 for PC, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. It was developed by Asobo Studios and published by Focus Home Interactive. Just so you are aware, there will be minor and major spoilers within this review, but you will be given a further warning when it comes to the major spoilers. So, without further ado, let's review A Plague Tale: Innocence. This game is set in France in 1348, in the midst of the 100 Years' War. You play as Amicia de Rune, a girl of noble descent. You begin the game hunting with your father and your dog. You learn that Amicia is a crack shot with a sling, and whilst hunting, a tragedy befalls your dog as it is unfortunately killed by an unknown force in a hole. You head home, and to continue the horrors, the Inquisition arrive and raid the estate in search for your younger brother Hugo. Hugo is a sickly child who has been locked away with your mother Beatrice, who using alchemy is looking to cure him. You witness your father get murdered and your mother helps you escape and instructs you to take Hugo to find a nearby doctor, at which point a blooded sword comes through the door, signifying her death in saving you. From here, you take your brother in the hopes of finding a cure to his sickness. You make friends along the way, learn the uses of alchemy, try to make a home for yourselves, learn how to deal with unending amounts of dangerous rats, and eventually thwart the Inquisition in their plans involving your younger brother. As stories go, it's decent. It begins in a very sad manner and really hits you in them feels. I mean, no one likes to watch a dog die in any situation. And to begin with, that really sets the tone that this game takes on going forward. The tone it does set, though, is perfect for the time. The 100 Years' War and the Black Death at this point in history made Europe an extremely dark and saddening place to be, unfortunately, with death being in most places that you looked, either from illness or war. There are two major themes prevalent within this game. The obvious one is innocence. This can be seen in Hugo as he must learn about his place in the world and how his innocence changes in these trying times. The other theme is family, seeing how the characters react to each other and how their relationships change and grow after facing certain circumstances. This is fantastically seen between Amicia and Hugo, but we shall chat a bit more about that later on. The main thing of this game is it's stealth orientated. You play as Amicia de Rune from a third-person perspective. The game mainly consists of sneaking around and solving survival puzzles. The stealth comes into place due to the fact that all enemies can kill Amicia with one shot. This really adds to the tension when trying to sneak past a group of enemies, as you know that one slip-up can mess the whole thing up. You have the use of your sling to help you past these enemies though. You can either use stones, which if you get a headshot, you can take out an enemy in one shot, or depending on if they have armor or if there are rats around, you can throw certain concoctions to remove the helmets, or even put out fire so that the rats can deal with them and save you some time. This all has to be thought out though, as your slingshot will make noise alerting other enemies to your position. You can also use things to distract the enemies to certain places so that you can sneak past them. This is done by either throwing pots to make a noise, or if there are metal items around, e.g. boxes of armor, you can throw stones at these to make a noise, grabbing their attention. The puzzles mostly come in the form of getting past the flesh-eating, plague-ridden rats strewn throughout the land. These mainly consist of using fire to keep them at bay, as they will not go into the light. This is done by either setting things on fire using the alchemic items, or by simply setting fire to a stick and walking through the rats to a safe area. For a lot of the game, you must escort your brother past all of the dangerous situations. And when I saw the trailers and information for this game, I thought that it was going to be a lot like an escort mission, but in a full game. Now on paper that sounds terrible, but they looked like they may have done it correctly. Here's the interesting thing though. They did not do it at all, in my opinion. So the mechanics are you must hold your brother's hand to lead him through places. If you leave him alone too long, he begins to panic and will attract unwanted attention. You can use him or even other friends who are with you to do certain tasks to help you progress. I believe these are great mechanics and would actually be a fantastic way of turning the escort mechanic into an entire game. The problem is, I believe I left Hugo alone twice throughout the entire game. The first was when I learned how to do it right at the beginning, and then again when we had to stop a water wheel. But at this point in the game, we had no enemies to worry about, and the rest of the game, if Hugo was with me, I could just hold his hand the entire time. I feel this was a misstep, as it was a mechanic that could have been utilised a lot more. You could have had more intricate puzzles, and even time-based puzzles in which you had to get Hugo to do more things, leaving him alone. Aside from that though, it worked really well, and the gameplay was really tight. I didn't find myself getting frustrated with the mechanics, and I found that it played extremely well and was very enjoyable, except one thing. This is where I'm going to talk about some major spoilers, so please, if you would like to avoid them, then go to the time shown on screen. For those still with me, a quick chat about boss fights. Yes, there are boss fights in this game, and unfortunately, they are not the greatest, and is actually where the game falls down a bit. There are 3 in total, if I remember correctly. The first is a case of running around and just throwing a rock at the enemy at the right time and dodging his giant mace-like hammer weapon thing. The second is against Lord Nicholas, the leader of the troops of the Inquisition. This one is done better, as you must sneak around and put out fires so that you can use the rats to attack him. This was probably the best of the boss fights. Then you have the final boss. Now at this point in the game, you find out that Hugo's sickness actually allows him to control the rats, which is pretty fun to use. The leader of the Inquisition, Vitalis, has stolen some of Hugo's blood and given himself this power and his own army of rats. This fight is weird, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a case of dodging the enemy attacks, telling your brother to attack when ready, and then throwing a rock when the enemy defenses are down. It was a bit disappointing. This game is based on stealth, and this fight takes place in a cathedral. And yes, I agree you now have these rat powers, but I would have loved a fight in which you must sneak around the cathedral and combining the rats and stealth attacks to win this fight. It felt like it went to this spectacle rather than the gameplay at this point, which was a bit of a letdown. Hello again to those who dodged the spoilers, good to have you back. These last couple of bits of gameplay are pretty simple. You can upgrade your equipment to make things slightly easier for you, either by silencing your sling or carrying more ammo and other things like that. The other is just collectibles. You can find flowers for Hugo to tell you about, or items that you can just learn some information from. Simple things like that. The music and sound effects for this game, I would actually say, is the thing that stood out most to me. The music is done by Olivier Derivière, apologies if I messed that name up, a French video game composer. The music is done in a way that, for one, fits the time period fantastically and really makes you feel like you're in the 1300s. This is done by using a lot of instruments such as violins and something that sounds like a lute. Could be wrong on that one though. The music moves perfectly with the atmosphere. When you are in dark, dank places with enemies and darkness around, you get these low, droning, drawn-out notes which help give a bleak outlook to the world. My favourite though is when the rats appear. You get surrounded in the darkness and the music becomes dark and fast. You hear the violins and what I believe to be a double bass playing quick notes over and over again, splitting between high and low. This gives you an immediate sense of urgency and fear. Olivier, you have my praise, sir, and this soundtrack was something else. The voice acting is pretty good. It's not the greatest there ever was, but it does what it needs to do. The best parts come from Charlotte McBurney and Logan Hannon, who play Amicia and Hugo respectively. They are both child actors, but they do these roles extremely well and work together extremely well. They make these characters seem like true siblings. This brings me to my earlier point about how you see the reactions between characters. When Amicia does things, you see how Hugo reacts and changes as he goes through the game. You see him get scared when being told to do things by Amicia. You see him smile when he sees his mother. And most of all, you see him get angry when him and Amicia disagree later in the game. You see him lose his childlike innocence, and with that, you see how Amicia is sad that she has to make him go through it all. Graphically, I cannot complain. I really can't. This game looks gorgeous. The set pieces you go through have had a lot of effort and detail put into them. An example I want to use is when you're travelling to a chateau with your brother and someone else, and you come across a battleground. There are just dead people strewn everywhere. It's dark and dreary, and the dead are literally piled as you walk through them. It perfectly represents the aftermath of a battleground. Other games throw a few of the dead here and there, but it's rare that you see something on this scale in which the path you walk is literally walled by the dead soldiers. The other thing that impressed me was the rats. The amount of rats you have on screen at one time is incredible, and every single one of them moves. Now, they move in odd ways when pushed into corners, and there are so many, but I get that, as I imagine it's tough to make them act natural in those circumstances. The incredible thing I found though was that when there were these uncountable amounts of rats on the screen, all moving, the game did not drop in performance. It held above 60 frames per second without fail, and that is goddamn impressive. It's interesting. As I'm writing this and truly looking over all the parts of this game, I realise that there is nothing particularly innovative about this game. We've had games based on stealth, we've had games based on siblings and their relationships, we have had games set in the Middle Ages and in the midst of wars. The thing is though, this game just has this charm about it. It just works. The characters and their relationships are investable, and you want to know where they go. With all the sadness that happens throughout the story, you get hooked and you want to see things get better for these characters. The gameplay is solid, and although they could have done more with the escort mechanic, it still works really well, and because it is not a particularly long game, it doesn't get boring. The music is phenomenal and the voice acting is decent enough. It took me roughly 7 to 8 hours to finish this, so if you enjoy a game with a gripping story and magnetic character relationships and thousands upon thousands of rats, then play this game. Well, thank you for joining me today everyone, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Did you play A Plague Tale: Innocence? If so, what did you think? Did you find it as gripping as me? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell and drop a like, and I shall catch you all next time. Take it easy everybody.